You can't get much more of a comfort dish than fish pie. And today I'm going to show you how I do it. To me, the fish is always the star of the dish, and that's why I don't put any vegetables in it. I infuse the milk that it's poached in, but I prefer to serve it with vegetables on the side. And I always like a little bit of texture, so I top mine with some infused breadcrumbs. It's really delicious. And you know, it does take a few pots, but it's not hard. And I always think that the end product is worth washing up a few pots and pans. And this is how I do it. So with the fish, you can use any fish you like, but I suggest a firmer sort of fish and one that you can afford. I use hoki fillets. I buy this brand from Aldi. So it says responsibly sourced New Zealand hoki fillets, which are also, I believe, known as blue grenadier. And it's got this tick here that says certified sustainable seafood. And hopefully that means something. So this bag only costs like $17 from Aldi's. If you like it a little bit richer, you could throw in some salmon, or you could throw in some prawns, or you could use smoked fish. It's entirely up to you. It's whatever you like. A lot of recipes says to poach it on the stove, but what I like to do is poach this fish in the oven. See, these are quite nice fillets of fish. So why I like poaching it in the oven is that I think it's just a gentler way to poach the fish. And it infuses the milk beautifully. You don't have to worry about it bubbling too much on the stove. And all I do is put it in a saucepan with 2 medium to large sliced onions. And that fish was defrosted overnight in the fridge. Then I add, say, 3 or 4 bay leaves. Mine are a bit broken, so I'll just add a few. 1 teaspoon of peppercorns. And I'm going to be using parsley later, so I just put in a few of these parsley stems that I've got here to infuse in the milk as well. And then the last thing I add to this is 4 cups, which is 1 litre of milk. And by using a smaller, well, this is quite big actually, but instead of using the large serving dish, by using this smaller one, it submerges the fish. And the trick is to put it into a cold oven and then light it, or then turn it on. And you just want it really gentle. So with a fan, 150 degrees Celsius, and without a fan, just 170 conventional. And for about 30 minutes. And while that's in the oven, I'll prep the other ingredients. Starting with some potatoes, and I have about 1 kilo of potatoes here. And I'm just going to peel them and put them into a pot with some cold water. And then I just chop them into quite big pieces because I don't want them to go too watery when I boil them. And to these potatoes, I add quite a generous amount of salt, which will penetrate into the potato, and I won't have to season it as much when they're cooked. Now, I'm not going to put these on the stove yet because I want this element warm so it spreads easy on top of the bechamel sauce, which I'll make when the fish is done. So I'll just put them on the stove, but I won't turn it on. So now I'll need some parsley chopped for one of the layers. And you can have as much or as little parsley as you like. That much. And I'll just chop that up. And that'll do. You don't want it too finely chopped. How am I going for time? Oh yeah, another 15 minutes. I really like the breadcrumb element on this fish pie. Not only does it add more flavour, it adds texture. And if you can, fresh breadcrumbs are the way to go. So I'm just using white bread here, white gluten-free bread actually, and I've probably got way more bread than I need crumbs. This bread was pretty fresh actually. And what is so lovely with these breadcrumbs is just a little bit you know, like say a 1 teaspoon of finely grated lemon zest. And that just gives a hint of lemon, just like that much. I don't want it too much lemon because it will overpower the dish. So in with the breadcrumbs go that finely grated rind. That just gives it a lovely little lemon hint of flavour. You know, lemon just goes perfect with fish. I'm going to put some melted butter in that later, but I'll do that last. Now the dish I'm using is this big one, and all I'm doing is just greasing it with a bit of butter and setting that aside. So that's all there is to do right now. The fish has another 5 minutes, so I'll have a quick clean up. Smells good. And the milk is steaming, but it's not boiling. So this fish is beautifully poached. So I carefully remove the fish, and I just like to keep it into whole bits. It's so moist and tender that it will fall apart anyway. So I don't think there's a need to break it up, and I like getting nice big bits of fish. Try not to get any peppercorns there. It doesn't matter if a few onions get in the dish. This is probably the trickiest part, just fishing it out, and perhaps tongs would work better. I've got kitchen hands, so I can withstand a bit of heat. And you could add a little bit more fish than this. Rightio, I think I've got all the fish. So I just set this aside. Then I pour the milk mixture through a strainer. You can pick up any little bits of fish here if you see any. And I'm going to sacrifice these onions because I don't need them. They'll overpower the dish. And they've already done their job and infused the milk. Discard the onions. And now is the time to put on the potatoes to boil. And I like a thick bechamel. If you like a saucier, sloppier fish pie, you don't have to add as much butter or flour to the remaining milk. So I've got 100 grams of butter here that I'm just melting. And when the butter is foaming and sizzling, I add the same amount, 100 grams of flour. I'll reduce my heat just a little bit and cook that off for a couple of minutes. If you're gluten-free like me, I like to use gluten-free plain flour as opposed to corn flour for this bechamel. So once that's been sort of bubbling for 2 or 3 minutes and it's changed colour slightly, because the milk is warm and I have more control over it, I like to add the milk off the heat and then I'll return it to the heat. So I take the warm strained milk mixture, and it will thicken almost instantly because it's warm. And using your whisk it well to remove all the lumps. And now I'm going to return it to the stove. And over a medium heat, it won't take long. I'm going to whisk it until it really thickens and it comes to the boil. And when you see some bubbles, that's almost done. And it's lovely and thick. Yep, that's done. So I'll just turn it off and I'll taste it for seasoning, because it has absolutely no seasoning in it yet, and I know it will taste so bland. So I start with just a teaspoon of salt, some black pepper or white pepper, now I'll taste it to see if it needs any more salt or pepper. That tastes delicious, and that's enough salt and pepper. Then I pour this over the fish, and this is what makes it so delicious. That bechamel is just so tasty. just lovely. Now I'll check on the potatoes, see how they're travelling. So you just want the skewer to go in and out easy, and they're not quite ready yet. There's still some resistance there. I'll leave them a few more minutes, which is good anyway because it allows the bechamel just a little time to set, because I'm going to put the mashed potatoes on top of it. It also gives me 5 minutes to wash some dishes. So when the potatoes show absolutely no resistance when poked with a fork, and poke a few of them to make sure. Well, a couple are a bit harder, but the rest are quite soft. So I turn them off, drain them, and then just let them steam just for a couple of minutes, which dries them out. If there's any water there, just discard it. Now you can use a ricer, a potato masher, anything you like to help mash these potatoes, but sometimes I find it just easier to get in there with a fork, especially when it's just for a layer of a pie, when it doesn't need to be perfectly smooth. Now some people add spring onions to the mashed potato, which would be delicious, but I like the fish to shine through, so the only thing I do is season these. And generally, you know, with mashed potatoes, I add butter and a bit of warm milk. And what I'm adding today, instead of butter and warmed milk, is some cream. Because, you know, basically cream is butter. And I usually just eyeball it, but I measured this and I warmed it up just a little bit in the microwave, and that's a half a cup. And I'm just going to taste it for seasoning. Oh, it's so lovely with the cream. Just a little tiny bit more salt, but because I salted it well when the potatoes cooked, it really permeated through the potatoes. And some pepper. And the rest of that half a cup of cream. And because the bechamel's been sitting there for like 15 minutes, it's firmed up, which makes it really good for spooning over the mashed potato. It doesn't sink into the pie, but remains its own layer. And if I had have cooked these potatoes earlier, they would have been much harder to spread because they would have gone cold. Potatoes are much easier to spread when they're warm. As evenly as you can get it. Doesn't really matter, to be honest. Now before I put the breadcrumbs on top, I get the parsley and put a nice layer of parsley there. And you know, you can mix the parsley through the potatoes, you can mix it through the breadcrumbs. I accidentally forgot to put it in the potatoes one day, so I did this instead, and now it's my favourite way to do it. I think it looks pretty. So with my super fresh breadcrumbs, that were too fresh actually, I add some melted butter or oil, and that's 50 grams of melted butter. We'll just encourage it to brown, and it will also taste delicious. And then, using my hands, I sprinkle this over the top. That was 3 cups of fresh breadcrumbs, but these are gluten-free, so they behave a little bit differently. And that is a fish pie ready to go in the oven. Now at this stage, you could wait till it cools a little bit more, cover it and put it in the fridge. And when you're ready to eat it, serve it like that. Or you could put it in the oven straight away, which I'm going to do. But first of all, I'm just going to have a little bit of a clean up because cooking shouldn't feel too rushed. And while this is in the oven, I want to make some honey carrots and some tomatoes. And that doesn't take long, and peas. And when you are ready to put it in the oven, light your oven or increase the temperature if you haven't turned it off to 170 degrees Celsius with a fan or 190 without a fan. I like to put it on the lower third of the oven, and that will probably take about 30 minutes, but I'll check it in 20. And while the pie's in the oven, it gives me plenty of time to do the sides. And even if the sides aren't quite ready by the time the pie is, it doesn't matter if the pie rests for 5, 10 or 15 minutes. But you know, half an hour is plenty of time. And the first one I'm going to do is honeyed carrots. Now I've already made a video on this, and if you don't mind, I'll just insert that in this video because it saves me a couple of hours of editing time, but I'm making the honeyed carrots exactly the same way now. And they're really easy to do, and they're a cheap vegetable, and they're nutritious, and they're really delicious done this way. So all I do first of all is sort of just chop them into a thick julienne, not too thin. And you can use this way of honeying carrots with as little or as many carrots as you like. And then I just pop them into a saucepan, barely cover them with cold water, and place them on the stove and bring them to the boil. And when the carrots come to the boil, they can just boil away. I'll just reduce the heat a little bit. They'll roll in simmer until they're really tender. So when you can put a skewer with hardly any resistance at all, then they're ready. And they're lovely and tender, and that's how you want them. Then I put the pot back on the heat, and it's probably better to do this in a fry pan, but to be honest, I can't be bothered dirtying another pan, so I just do it in the same pan I cook them in. And then to the pan I add a good knob of butter, a good squeeze of honey, and then the carrots. And just stir them around and cook them for a couple more minutes until they're all glazed with the honey and the butter. One other thing, just a tiny little wincy bit of salt, which helps bring out the flavours. And when they're lovely and glazed, I just turn off the heat, put on the lid and keep them warm. So it's been 25 minutes and it's bubbling and it's browning. And I just want to cook it for 5 more minutes so it doesn't brown too much. I'm just going to cover with a sheet of baking paper. And in the meantime, I'm just finishing off the honeyed carrots, and I've put a pot of the water on for the peas, and I've put a pan in the middle there, and that's for the tomatoes. So my pan's been heating up for a few minutes, and I'm just putting a bit of olive oil in there. Enough to cover the base, and all I want to do is basically just warm up and blister these lovely grape tomatoes that I have. And they will splutter. I seriously need to get one of those fry pan covers to stop the splutters getting everywhere. But the timer's just gone off and the pie is ready to get out. It smells delicious. And I'll just finish off the vegetables and then plate up. And that doesn't matter if it rests for a few minutes. The honey carrots are done. I'll put some peas into the water. Turn the heat up on the peas, bring them to the boil. And the tomatoes are how I want them. They're just starting to soften, and now I put just a little bit of salt and a little bit of pepper. And you know, fish goes so well with the tomatoes. The tomatoes sort of just like cut the richness of the fish. I'm just going to turn the heat down a little bit and let them just sit there so they stay warm while the peas come up to the boil. and always with peas, I like to throw a knob of butter in just to make them more delicious. And sometimes, you know, you're even able to slice this. I'm just going to use my spatula. Some honeyed carrots, some green peas, which have had a little bit of butter put in them, some of these beautiful cherry or grape tomatoes, and the very last thing, so lovely served with it, is just a wedge of lemon. And that is one beautiful dinner. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoy this, and I really hope to see you again soon.